A fly in the ointment makes it a bad ointment. Good afternoon. It's December 27th and you are watching UATV. We're about to explain complex things in simple terms. Here is some ancient history explained for you. Brennus, the leader of the Celtic tribe of the Senons, the leader of victorious campaign against Rome in 387 before Christ. The tribe of Senons, led by Brennus, invaded northern Italy. Pushing the Etruscans, they crossed the Alps and camped near the city of Clusium, which was friendly to Roman Republic. Frightened residents turned to the Romans for help. Roman ambassadors tried to settle the conflict. Plutarch puts into the mouth of Brennus a speech in which he states that the Romans in their policy follow the oldest of the laws, which gives the strong the property of the weak, and to which everyone obeys from God to the wild beast. So does nowadays Russia. The rights of the strong has completely replaced the law. Abuse of power, while sacrificing the rights, is a commonly accepted concept of the fastest and easiest way to the property of any kind, money, land, power, and is a socially adopted paradigm by an overwhelming majority of the nation, an absolute majority of elites. This is how all of the Russian oligarchs has made it up to their mind-boggling riches. Let the law call it a bribery, a theft of a state property on an especially large scale, a political murder, an usurpation of power, desecration of the Constitution, and the undermining of the democratic values in general, and the basic human rights in particular. No one in Russia cares. If you did it, it's legit enough. This is why Putin reigns in Russia for a quarter of a century, passing the power to his courtier puppets like Medvedev and taking it away whenever he wishes, and adapting the national constitution to personal needs, easy peasy. The Russian nation will consent to anything and will keep being silent at all times. Eventually, the nation is now sent to go for death for its Tsar.
I find it necessary to support the proposal of the Defense Ministry and the General Staff on partial mobilization in the Russian Federation to defend our motherland and its sovereignty and territorial integrity. We are talking about partial mobilization. In other words, only military reservists, primarily those who served in the armed forces and have specific military occupational specialties and corresponding experience, will be called up. Before being sent to their units, those called up for active duty will undergo mandatory additional military training based on the experience of the special military operation.
Vladimir Putin, just as ancient Roman Brennus, takes whatever he desires for only one reason: because he can. He can afford to abuse the power and sacrifice the rights of the whole Russian nation on a mind-boggling scale, instigating an unjust, criminal, imperial, colonial warfare that drags the whole nation into international isolation. An enormous negative aftermath. Abuse is the way of life, a motto, a paradigm. Clear examples of such abuse is Russia's abuse of the UN veto power when blocking of a resolution to establish a tribunal to investigate the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17. Recognition of mass killings in Srebrenica as genocide, and a prerequisite for national reconciliation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Response to the political and humanitarian situation in Venezuela. Extension of the mandate of the UN observation mission in Georgia at a critical for the country moment. Strengthening the sanctions regime against the Northern Korea, as well as all the 16 resolutions against Syria. At the current stage of aggression, the Putin's Federation feels its complete impunity and feels like it can turn to blackmailing the international community by threatening to use nuclear power. It is only a matter of time when the action of the Russian Federation, discredit and destroy the entire ointment of the United Nations system, the only and irreplaceable global intergovernmental institution that unites all the states of the world at the negotiating table. So, what do you do with the fly? Ukraine calls on the United Nations to deprive Russia of its status as a permanent member of the UN Security Council and to exclude it from the UN as a whole.
Russia falsely considers the issue settled, referring to the fact that since December the 24th, 1991, and publicly since December 31st, 1991, a country named plate for the Russian Federation appeared in the UN Security Council. In fact, according to the UN Charter, there has never been legitimate grounds for this. Statement of the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
However, unlike Putin's federation, United Nations should act so not because it can, but because this question should be resolved in a broad context of Russia's responsibility for gross violations of the norms and principles of international law in general, as well as for crimes committed on the territory of Ukraine, for war crimes and crimes against humanity, as well as the crime of genocide in particular. We assume that the removal of the Russian Federation from the United Nations Security Council will not have retroactive effect on the previous decisions of the body and will not entail the annulment of provision of the resolutions of the Security Council adopted so far. We strongly believe that Putin's federation should become an international outcast, and the new, reborn for the world Russian Federation, in turn guided by the principle of equality of UN members, should follow the same international legal path of reacquiring membership in the organization in the future as all the others country did. Compliance with the Charter's procedure should be the only criteria that will restore the right of any member state to vote in the General Assembly on the feasibility of admitting the Russian Federation to the UN, a statutory right they were, in fact, deprived of 31 years ago. Still, also in fact, they voted illegally. And the United Nations encouraged and tolerated that with its collective eyes wide shut. Ain't the fly been spoiling the ointment for long enough? Let's fix the bug, Ukraine says. Putin threw a party in St. Petersburg. It was a forced invitation for someone that someone did his best to fake it in a hope he will make it. Somehow, while entering the Boris Yeltsin Presidential Library, Alexander Lukashenko had a brief conversation with journalists. When asked what to expect from 2023 and what it will be like, Lukashenko said, "The happiest, the most successful. Oh, don't worry, everything will be fine." Belta, official Lukashenko's pocket news mouthpiece, an official Belarus state-owned agency that informs us that the president was also asked how he was doing before the summit. "I'm okay," Alexander Lukashenko replied. He noted that as the new year is drawing closer, the mood is growing more joyful. It can't be better. He said it will be best on New Year's Eve. Things were slowly getting more and more friendly there. Let us cite Belta for a little bit more for you, adding a couple of fact-checking, truth-triggering terms into the eulogy. The dictator welcomed the participants of the meeting. The Russian mad head of a terrorist state thanked the leaders of the CIA's countries for accepting the "you have no choice" invitation to attend the traditional pre-New Year informal meeting. The fact that we have once again gathered in such a friendly circle of people who can't trust each other eloquently testifies to our forced commitment to continuing to jointly build oppressive cooperation in the CIS in the spirit of genuine strategic partnership, my personal and not mutual benefit and consideration of the interests of all countries that I don't care about. I mean, we all need it from time to time. A gathering of like-minded people, even if forcibly gathered, even if not so like-minded, is also human. Putin wants recognition badly. He needs to be accepted by the society. Although for someone born and raised in the outdated Soviet imperial paradigm, simply sees no difference between like-minded and those not having much of a choice, being squeezed in the middle of the necessity and the worldwide outrage of their kind host triggered for criminal warfare. Knowing that, Putin presented the CIS leaders with club rings that look like they are made of yellow and white gold. Each ring's design incorporates the CIS emblem and the words Happy New Year 2023. Ring number 1 went to Putin, of course. Of all the recipients, the presidents of Azerbaijan, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, as well as the Armenian Prime Minister, only Alexander Lukashenko put on his ring as soon as he received it. It seemed that every tome, when he looks on it, he says, "My precious." Sweet, isn't it? Also on December 30th, 1922, representative of the Soviet governments of Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and the Transcaucasian Republic, encompassing Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, announced the formation of a new country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the first nation in the world based on Marxist socialism. This Saturday, this 30th of 2022, it is 100 years since the monstrosity disappeared. 100 years after the signing of the treaty establishing the Soviet Union, the Kremlin's quest for power and influence continues. Russian missiles continue to strike Kiev as Putin reasserts a Soviet sphere of influence. Even as the USSR itself fades into history, human suffering continues. As many as 40,000 Ukrainian civilians have died this year as a result of Russia's invasion and the rights and freedoms of ours and Russian, just by the way, people continue to erode. And all those ringleaders gathered at Putin's party are perfectly aware of the sad fact. It was Henry Keane on a daily wrap-up explaining complex things in simple words on UATV channel. See you tomorrow for more. Stay tuned and safe.